Hi, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. Before we get started, let me walk you through some of the engagement features available on our webinar platform. We're completely live today, and we have a few speakers with us who would love to engage with you. So to get us started, if you could all go to that chat area right now, I want you to all go in chat and let us know where you're tuning in from. So I'm going to pull it up myself and right where I am coming from. Cool. All right. Looks like we got a lot of people with us today. That's awesome. Okay. On top of chat, and I want you to use that chat area to add your commentary. If you relate to anything that we're talking about in our webinar today, feel free to put that in the chat area. You can also use the Q&A area. That's where you want to put any questions that you have for our speakers throughout the webinar. We'll have some time at the end and we'll check out all of those questions that you can upvote, and we'll take the top upvoted questions first and ask our panel. We also have a couple of polls that we'll be looking at in a few minutes, so I'm going to get back to that shortly. And to download this slide deck that I'm about to share and any of the relevant resources, you can use the Resources tab. And you'll be receiving a follow-up email with the link to the recording, and you can rewatch that at any time. And with that, I'm going to introduce myself. I am Kelly Kopek. I am on the product marketing team at Cvent, and I look after our exchange solutions. And what the exchange solutions really are, they're our technology that connects planners and suppliers. Things like our venue sourcing technology, the Cvent Supplier Network, Passkey, our room block management technology, or event diagramming, which helps you diagram your space with the planner and hotel together through collaboration. And I'm going to bring on the rest of our speakers in a little bit, but first, I mentioned that we would be using some polls today. So I want to use this time right now for you to click on that poll area and pull up the two polls. So there are two questions I want you to answer. First, I want you to look at what can planners do in the RFP to get bids? And then secondly, what can hotels do in the proposal to get shortlisted? So we asked both of these questions recently in a workshop that we did at Cvent Connect in San Antonio. The choices that you see as the poll choices, they're the compiled results from the workshop and what planners and suppliers talked about together at that workshop. And I purposely didn't add an all of the above choice because I wanted to see what was really most important in the top choices from this audience to guide us in our panel discussion later today. So we're going to be discussing those top choices first when we bring on the panel later. And feel free to answer the polls over the next few minutes as I go through some of the venue sourcing data. And if you haven't realized, our topic today is focused around best practices when venue sourcing, all about collaboration and working better together. So I thought it would be relevant and helpful to share Cvent's latest venue sourcing data so we can see trends emerging that will really aid us in our panel discussion later. So I want to explain, if we can go to the next slide, how we get the data that we're about to share with you all. And it's all based on the powerful network effect that Cvent's technology creates. It's what we like to call our Cvent ecosystem. We have an ecosystem with our event cloud. Internally, this is what we like to call our event technology that empowers planners and marketers to create amazing events across in-person, hybrid, and virtual formats. We have 126,000 planners who sourced over 3 million total group RFPs last year. And we have also over 300,000 venues that are listed on our Cvent Supplier Network. Hopefully a lot of you know what that is. You're either listed or using it to source your venues as a planner. The hotels and destinations on our Cvent Supplier Network use the Hospitality Cloud platform to reach event organizers, showcase their unique event spaces, and to collaborate and plan meetings and events of all types and sizes. So because of this event ecosystem, we're able to get a lot of data of how users are actually sending RFPs, how hotels and venues are responding to RFPs. And we create this really powerful network effect. And that's really how we get this data that I'm about to share. So when looking at July of this year compared to July of last year, RFP volume is up 21%. Room nights are up 27%, and the proposed rate growth is up 4% year over year. Over the last few years, we would often hear concerns about extremely short booking windows, and we see significant shifts in the amount of room nights being sourced in the year for the year versus more than a year out. But if you look at this graphic right here, you can see that's really beginning to stabilize. And this is comparing, again, July 23 to July 24. You can see that 28% of room nights have been sourced in the year for the year in July 2023 versus 30% in July 2024. 43% were sourced between 12 to 24 months in July 2023 versus 41% in 2024. And 29%, they've been sourced more than 2 years out and beyond in 2023 versus 30% in 2024. So very similar when we look the year over year comparison, which is actually a good thing in this case. In July 2024, 26% of the planner organizations sourcing through Cvent are new. They're new to the Cvent supplier network. They're new organizations in our system. And that goes to show you just that there's a lot of new players in the event space. And these new organizations, they're not just mom and pop shops. They're not just sourcing a meeting space, only RFP for a social gathering. You can see the average program sourced by these new organizations is just under 70 peak rooms. So this means opportunity for many of the hotels to capitalize on this business. And planners often need to look across many venues because we know there's issues with capacity. Might be budget issues. There's a lot of reasons to shop around, but in some cases, it's not just, looking at different venues. They might be actually considering multiple destinations. So you could see with our data that 77% of RFPs were sent to a single metro area in July. 23 were sent to 2 or more metro areas, and 13% were sent to 3 or more metro areas. So that shows us that nearly 25% of the time, planners are considering at least 2 destinations for an upcoming event. Now let's look at room nights and proposed rate growth. You can see how the room nights in purple, how they've grown year over year during the month of July by brand scale. The upper mid scale to luxury brands see the most growth when it comes to room nights. More room nights are going to the top brand scales, even though, very interestingly, proposed rates are growing year over year too, more so for those upper brand scales. And you could see that data reflected in the blue. So let's look at why suppliers are turning down business. And we'll get to a lot of this later too in our discussion. 59% of the RFPs in our system, this is July again, are turned down due to unavailability of either guest rooms and meeting space or date patterns. And if you don't feel like you are getting enough bids back as a planner, you can take advantage of submitting the RFP with alternate dates, because we found that planners were flexible to accept alternate date proposals on 43% of the RFPs that were turned down. And then the last thing I want to touch on before we get into our panel is the life cycle of an event. Now, depending on the size of the event, there's going to be a difference. So right now I'm just going to show for all event sizes, the event life cycle. And we've plotted 5 key milestones, including event creation date, RFP send date, RFP awarded date, event launch date. That's really when the marketing begins for an event. And lastly, the event start date. So during the month of July, the average duration of an event created in Cvent to the event start date is 162 days. And then, as I mentioned, the size of the event will clearly impact the timeline. So I have a slide to show how that is impacted. You can see for the smaller events at the top, With less than 50 attendees, from start to finish, it's about 4 months, the timeline. Planners are usually sending those RFPs out approximately 100 days from the event start date, and it takes about 33 days to award the RFP to a venue. And for the larger events with 500 or more attendees, on average, planners are starting the process 1 year out, sending out the RFP approximately 300 days from the event, and taking about 91 days to award the RFP to a venue. So from the creation of an event in Cvent to the start date of the event, the life cycle will vary based on the overall size and complexity, but this is what we're seeing right now through our data. And with that, I want to get into our panel discussion. And hopefully some of that data got you thinking on what's going on with venue sourcing, how you are thinking about your events, how you are thinking about RFPs that are coming into you. And it's the perfect time to bring in our guest speakers to talk a little bit more on that and how we can work better together. So I want to welcome first Terry to join our panel. And I'm going to ask you, Terry, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at your company.
Sure. Thanks, Kelly. And hi, everyone. My name is Terry Riddle. I'm a senior sourcing specialist with CWT Meetings and Events. I'm on a client dedicated account, an enterprise client. So we source domestically and internationally, anything as small as 10 room nights on peak up to really anything. The sky's the limit. So our team manages all of that for our client.
Amazing. Well, thanks for joining us, Terry. And then we also have Jenna Lee joining us. Hi, Jenna Lee. Welcome.
Hi, Kelly. Hello, everyone. My name is Jenna Lee.
Sorry, I didn't ask you. Tell us about yourself.
Okay, I will. My name is Jenna Lee, and I'm a senior account director for IHG Hotels and Resorts, one of the largest hotel companies in the world. And I have the pleasure of working with a portfolio of large to medium-sized companies that are headquartered on the West Coast, but have business all over the world. So I focus on their business travel and their groups and events needs. And I'm based in Boise, Idaho, and I see someone is joining us from Colorado. So they're close to where I'm from. Welcome.
Welcome. I didn't go in the chat and see where everyone's from, but good to hear that they're from all over the place. So thank you all for interacting with us, and keep it coming. And welcome, Jenna Lee, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So now I'm really excited to pull up the poll results. As I mentioned, we had that session at Cvent Connect. Terry was actually on our panel of that session. Maybe some of you in attendance were actually on site at Cvent Connect 2 for this workshop that I'm talking about. And we asked this question to our workshop attendees, and we had them talk about each of these questions at the tables. And I compiled what they talked about, to put together these answers to the poll. Oh, and now that I'm looking at it, it's interesting that it's actually the order that I had put it in is the order that you're ranking them in importance. So very interesting there. So I want to take the what we did in the workshop a step further and talk a little bit more about how planners and suppliers can work better together. And I'm going to use these results as kind of our starting place. So we can start with that top result. When I ask the question, what can planners do in the RFP to get bids? You all are saying, be more detailed, transparent, and realistic upfront is the most important thing. Which I kind of anticipated that, to be honest. So now I'm going to ask some questions about that a little bit further to our panel. So generally, from the hotel perspective, what details do you appreciate the planner including in the RFP to set realistic expectations?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I love knowing whether or not the dates are flexible. You shared some data earlier about that. And we all know that hotels have need dates. And so if we know that the dates are flexible and we're able to share what our need dates are as well, that might allow the planner to get even a better bid from our hotels. And so knowing that dates are flexible is really important. Also knowing if an RFP can be sent to other cities or different hotels. And I think that's really important so that I can become that trusted advisor and be able to share with the planner where there might be opportunities with new hotels in certain markets. I also think it's really important to know what your budget is. I know that that's hard for planners, but maybe even just a target rate that they want to be within, because I think this saves time in the negotiation. So we would love to know if you have a target rate that you're trying to stay within, or if you can share what your budget is.
Yeah, and I think that's all about transparency. And sometimes maybe on the planner side, all of that information, like you said, isn't finalized, but it sounds like the more information, the better for the supplier. And I think that Terry, just from talking to you, you've been doing that with your client that you source for, just putting as much information up front. And that kind of takes us into that second option in that question was provide history and future opportunities, because that's a part of it. You providing as much information as possible up front in the RFP. So is that something that you typically do, Terry, in the initial RFP?
Yeah, absolutely. When I'm sending out an RFP, if it's an annual event and I have that historical knowledge, I want to include any cities they've been to in the past. If the group plans to expand attendees in this current RFP versus the prior years, I want to tell the hotel a little bit of why. Are they adding an international element, or they're adding attendees from other areas? And that's why we're seeing an increase. Potentially what issues or things they liked or didn't like about where they've hosted historically. I think all of that's important, just so suppliers and our NSOs why we're considering another city. So as much as I can share, I share. Once we get to the shortlisted aspect of the program, I will also share additional information if a hotel needs to know, how's this group performing historically? I'm happy to let you know that. But in the initial RFP, trying to be as transparent as possible is always best practice.
Yeah. And then on the receiving end, generally, I'm wondering, when you understand things like the history and the future opportunities up front, does that help you, or does that change the way that the hotels respond in any way?
It absolutely does, Kelly. And we love when you are able to give us as much history as you can and as much details about the event from the past. We can all learn from history, right? And so it's great to know what was contracted and then what was actually picked up. So the hotel can use that with possibly their attrition that they're asking for. A lot of times, though, we don't see, Terry, that future opportunities are shared. And I wish that was shared more often, because I think this could be really beneficial for planners to get maybe a better proposal from our hotels. Knowing what future opportunities there are allows the hotel to have a bigger picture and maybe even do a multi-year contract. And so, seeing that bigger picture, they could get the dates that they want because it would be on the books earlier. And so, I don't know, I would just love to see us use future opportunities more.
And then I want to ask a little bit about negotiations. Do you think it helps there as well? Have you seen it play out better when that full picture is shared?
Absolutely. Like I said, when we know that there might be the possibility of us contracting for a second year, we're able to offer potentially better rates, because we know that a repeat event will be easier for our hotel to accommodate, because we will have done it the year before. And it allows our hotel to shrink, right? Because we're able to book that event early and then layer around it. So I do think that it helps with negotiations.
Great. And then on the topic of flexibility, which I think kind of plays into what we were just talking about with the transparency and just making the details are there up front, I want to ask Terry, do you have an example of a planner providing, well, you providing flexible details in the RFP?
Yeah, so I think the most obvious form of flexibility would be with dates. So putting in alternate dates in the RFP or date patterns. So if the group, really wants to arrive on a Monday, but they'll consider a Sunday if the rates are preferred, mentioning that in the RFP just kind of goes a long way with potentially getting more proposals. In terms of other ways to show flexibility, I always like, especially for large groups that are kind of space intensive, I like to talk to our client in advance of sending out the RFP, knowing what their preferred, meeting space needs are, but also keeping in mind that maybe a property has great space, but will need to be a little bit more flexible in how it's used. And, the suppliers are experts in their properties, so sometimes it's good to see what they can envision and what they can do with their space. And we don't know that unless we indicate that we're flexible.
And then are some of those details, you sourcing on behalf of a client, is that really important for the client to see when you're showing them, choices for the venue?
Absolutely. We need to be able to consult with them when we provide the availability reports to them. And so anything that kind of deviates from their initial thoughts on what they want, we need to be able to illustrate that and really highlight what the property is able to do.
Yeah, absolutely. The next option in the poll results was leverage NSOs and RFP showcase. I'm assuming that wasn't higher up in the rankings because some of you might not know what RFP showcase is. So RFP showcase is actually a tool that's specific to Cvent and our Cvent supplier network. It's where planners can post their RFPs in an area we like to call showcase. And basically you're widening your search and you're opening up the RFP to suppliers that are willing and ready to bid on your business. And I know that Terry uses RFP Showcase. So I want to ask you a little bit more about how that has benefited you and your clients.
Yeah, definitely. I've used RFP Showcase successfully, and meaning I've contracted from using RFP Showcase for our client. So our client is headquartered in a busy area, and oftentimes they have in mind the property that they want to go to. Unfortunately, they're not always available. So in order to kind of cast a bigger net, RFP Showcase allows you to put the proposal, and it kind of puts it in the hands of the suppliers where they can respond if they have availability. So I found it really beneficial for programs that are short lead times, which we're seeing more often on our account. So those, sometimes small room blocks take a lot of time that you're not expecting. So RFP Showcase really streamlines that process. We encourage our teammates to use it just for an efficiency.
You mentioned lead times, and kind of going off script here, but I shared some data on those booking windows and typical lead times. You said you've been getting some shorter lead times. Is that common right now? Is that something your client, is putting on you to source in shorter timelines than before? And how have you been adapting to that?
Yeah, so for our larger meetings, I think we see the longer lead times like your illustration showed, but I would say that we get smaller pop-up room blocks, if you will, that are the shorter lead times. So our standard is 60-day lead times, but we see 30, we see sometimes less than that. And if our team has capacity, we take it, but it's not our standard practice.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that it plays nicely into using NSOs as a resource to get responses faster. And that was a part of this selection as well. So generally, as an NSO, what benefit can you provide when you're brought in early on an RFP?
Yeah, I think that it's all about relationships. As an NSO, I work really hard to develop relationships with our planners that we're working with. And I also develop relationships with our hotels. And so it just allows us to move faster. it allows me to be the one point of contact for our planner. I can't imagine being a planner and sending out an RFP to 10, 15, 20, 25 hotels and having all of those hotels want to talk to them to ask them specific questions. And so as an NSO, I can be that one point of contact. I can be that one point of contact for our hotels as well. And so this allows me to share with the hotel the things that the planner is looking for, their hot buttons, and I'm able to help close the deal. Oftentimes, we opened last year about one hotel a day. And so it is impossible for a planner to stay on top of new hotels in new markets. And so a lot of times they rely on me, and I try to keep them updated on new products in new markets.
And I imagine because of the relationships, that planners and NSOs have, it oftentimes goes like beyond RFP, right? So there's probably a lot that takes place outside the RFP. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, is it typical that maybe a planner sends an RFP, then picks up the phone and calls you, or maybe that takes place before the RFP? How does that go down?
Absolutely. It's very common when you have a relationship with a planner that they will give you the heads up that they're working on something. And even you can have a conversation about these new markets or different areas that they're looking at. So it's more than just the RFP coming through Cvent. I feel like I have texts from a lot of our planners because we're at that level with our relationship, and they are wanting to move fast. And so they'll just text me and see if we can jump on a quick call, or if they have questions about an RFP, they'll text me. And so I would really encourage you to use your NSOs to help close deals.
We were talking about narrowing down cities. At least I was about to talk about narrowing down cities. So, and I have a question for Jenna Lee. In terms of, planners considering multiple cities and, you getting that information up front in the RFP, how do you deal with that? How does it change how you respond?
Well, I love to know when a planner is considering other cities. Like I said before, we opened last year nearly one hotel a day. And so this allows me to share with the planner what new hotels have opened in the different markets and where I think they should consider, and really be that trusted advisor. So I do love when they let me know that they're considering other cities. As a on-property seller, I also like to know when a planner is looking at other cities, because it allows me to do what I do best, and that is to sell my own city. On-property sellers are experts when it comes to their city. And so if I know that they're considering other cities, this would allow me to connect with the CVB and pull in some different things, offerings for our city. It would allow me to also ask them if they'd like to come and experience the city for a site visit. And so I feel like knowing that they are looking at other cities just allows me to focus on what is different about my city, what makes my city special, and I'm able to communicate that in the RFP.
Amazing. And then hearing that response, Terry, what factors really help you choose one city over another? Because I'm sure you have clients that are looking, at multiple cities and can't really narrow it down until you get that information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So I think part of it is the entire package of what's being offered from city to city. But Jenny really made a good point that our NSOs partner with CVBs. So, sometimes CVBs are able to offer something that the hotel's not able to, whether it's in terms of the site visit or an incentive to bring a group in. So I think it's just the whole package altogether. And then ultimately it's up to the client and their stakeholders to determine best location. For the client that I am dedicated to, a lot of it comes down to location and proximity to where their offices are, or where they have a footprint. So they tend not to have a lot of meetings outside of where they have a footprint.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and glad to hear that it really matters, how the two are collaborating, and makes a difference in what's in the RFP, and then how the hotelier can respond, which I think leads us to the second question that we asked the audience. What can hotels do in their proposal to get shortlisted? Oh, yay. And we have the responses right here. It looks like the top response was thorough answers and detail, which is funny to me, because we're talking about how you have to be thorough in the RFP, but guess what? You have to be just as thorough in the response in order to get shortlisted. Second one was flexibility and prioritize. Really, actually, it's a tie now. They're still changing. Flexibility and prioritize is tied with rates and concessions. And then response time is the final one. So I will start with the thorough answers and detail, as that is our top choice by this audience. I already mentioned how it's very important to be detailed in the RFP. We heard that from Jenny and Terry, but we need suppliers to send back thorough proposals. And I think that historically, over the past few years, has been a challenge, and due to resourcing and new people in the industry. And I'm wondering how it has improved from both of your point of view. So I'm going to ask you, Terry, have you been getting more thorough proposals in 2024?
As a whole, I would say yes. I am seeing more thorough proposals, and I'm seeing more timely proposals, which, you just mentioned that staffing is getting better. So I think that that's part of it. And then I think our NSOs stay on top of RFPs that we send out really well. So that helps on both sides of that. And then in addition, from a planner perspective, I think if we do a good job of sending out an RFP with intention and transparency, which, was part of the whole question, then we get better responses. So if I'm not clear in what my client needs to know, then the hotel doesn't really know what I need to know. So I think that's an important component of it as well.
And then on the flip side, Jenny, how has your team been handling RFP volume and responding adequately?
Well, we're not complaining. It is so refreshing to see this increase in RFPs year over year. But it can be challenging as well, because we have been asked to do more with less. And so it really requires us to be intentional with our time, and maybe prioritizing which RFPs we're going to respond to first, which ones really do fit our hotel and our need dates and our needs as an overall package. And so I think that this looks different for everyone. But as far as myself, I block out time in my schedule to review proposals, and I make it a daily thing, a daily activity. And so I think just being intentional on how I'm going to accomplish responding to the increase, and then just it's an exciting time. We're so glad that we're seeing this increase.
That's amazing to hear. Yeah, and the data I showed earlier really does show that increase year over year. So it's important, I guess, that you and the team have a system in place in order to accommodate the influx of RFPs. So that's great to hear that you're prioritizing. which is, I think, the next one I'm going to go to. And I kind of grouped flexibility and prioritization together when it comes to what hotels can do in their proposals. So I want to ask you, Jenny, we talked about the flip side of that, the planner providing flexibility in the RFP. But what's an example or some examples of what a hotel can do in the proposal to provide flexibility? And I know you already kind of talked about alternate dates. So if there's anything else you want to share.
Yeah. I think that we can also be very flexible when it comes to contracting. If we are just if we just have our blinders on and we aren't open to other thoughts about contracting, then we might lose out on these events. So I think being flexible on contracting, I also think that we can be flexible on the concessions that we offer. We could just take the opportunity to be flexible, be unique, think outside the box when it comes to concessions. But I also think we can get creative when it comes to outdoor spaces or just spaces in general. So I recently attended a meeting at one of our hotels, and they have a speakeasy down in their basement, and it's only open 3 nights a week. And so being creative with using that space would give a planner an opportunity to be in a really cool vibe and provide a private exclusive experience. And that's just being flexible.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like those unique experiences are what planners are looking for in order to, wow attendees, because a lot of our data is showing that special event venues are really trending up. I didn't share that today, but we're seeing that, maybe planners are looking outside of the traditional hotel, not for the entire event, but to host those unique experiences. So if the hotel can provide that unique experience, that's even better. So that's an amazing way to be flexible and, give the planner those details up front. And I want to dive a little bit more into the concession part of what you were just talking about, Jenny. And I'm wondering, in terms of concessions, what can you offer that can really stand out and maybe make, a planner consider your property when rate may be an issue?
Yeah. I think we could talk about all the standard things, right? We can offer food and beverage credits. We could offer a discount on our AV, upgrades, access to VIP levels, the room to comp ratio we could get creative with. We could include self or valet parking, Wi-Fi, discount on welcome amenities, spa credits. I mean, we could go on and on, but I think that what is really important here is your city, your property. So get creative, think outside the box, think of unique ways that you could build this into the rate. So you could help a planner save money by doing a welcome reception along with your hosted wine hour in your lobby. You could, instead of the planner going off property for dinner, you could provide a late night food and beverage after your restaurant closes, and they would save on transportation as well. So a few years ago, I was in a meeting in Washington, D.C. at one of our hotels, and they did a fantastic job with this, to the point that I remember it. And so upon arrival, they had their whole management team in the lobby welcoming us, but not only welcoming us, engaging with us with a glass of champagne. And it was something little, but it's something that they did really well that I remember.
And I'm sure it's hard to remember a lot of details of all the events that we all go to. So
but I remember it.
Yeah, that's great that really stood out. And then from the planner perspective, Terry, for you and your clients, what maybe it's something that Jenna Lee mentioned, maybe it's something she didn't mention, what really stands out in terms of a concession that would make you consider a property slightly over budget?
Yeah, so I think you have to consider the full concession package of what's being allowed. So when we're, when we're presenting the availability report to the client, if the food and beverage minimum is lower, and when we look at the menu prices, we know that the group is going to exceed that food and beverage minimum. If we agree to increase the food and beverage minimum, where else can we see savings for the client? I love what Jenna Lee mentioned about that speakeasy space or any other unique spaces that are maybe closed throughout the week that could be used for groups, during their close times. I think that we find a lot of requests for those unique spaces where they don't have to travel to them. So she touched on all of that. I think that that's a key piece going forward that groups are looking for. So if you can add that in, like you said, we can show savings on transportation costs. We can show, you're not going to lose guests because you're not walking down the street, and people are going to divert into other venues. So basically, it's just the whole concession package.
Absolutely. I do want to be aware of our time and make sure we get to any questions that are coming in. So feel free to continue to add your questions to Q&A because we're going to get there in a little bit. But I want to move on to that final choice in the second poll, which was response time. And we look at response time a lot in terms of a data point at Cvent, and we know that the top three responders often win the bid, and response time is crucial in order to make sure you're getting in front of the planner to meet their timeline. So I'm wondering, Terry, what is the response time that you require to meet your clients' needs? And do you consider properties that don't meet your deadline, or is it those that stay within your deadline?
So we have a service level agreement with our client. So for domestic RFPs, the response is 3 business days. And then for international RFPs, 5 business days. So within that time, we have to provide the availability report to the client. If a property does respond outside of that window, we will still present that as if it was received in that required timeline. It's just that they'll receive it after they've received the initial RFPs that came in. It really just depends on the client on if they really consider anything outside of the that required timeline, but we always present it to them.
Yeah, and then how important, I guess, on the flip side, generally, is the response time from the properties and meeting the deadline that the planner is putting in place? Is that something that's prioritized?
Absolutely. It's great to hear that. My thought about response time is exactly what your data is showing. We just see over and over again as an NSO that the hotels that respond first or within 24 hours are the hotels that win the business. And I think that it just sends the right message that we want the business, or that you want the business, and it sets the tone for the planner on future expectations with responsiveness. And so, it's not just about responding on quickly, but it also sets the tone, I think. And if you want the business, respond within that timeline. And I think it's important to also note, don't ever not respond to an RFP. If it's not going to work, go ahead and turn it down, but please respond.
That's funny. We were just talking about that sometimes maybe planners feel like their RFP is in limbo if they haven't heard anything. So even like acknowledging receipt, right? Or that you're working on it, just so the planner understands that, okay, this is something that they've received and are working on, I think is very helpful. And we're even talking about implementing that into our technology a little bit better, because it is an action that the hotel has to take to turn it down, or to Yeah, and sometimes that's a misstep. So how can we make it easier for both sides to understand where the other is at?
Yeah, communication.
Exactly. Communication, working better together.
Right.
So is there anything else that on the topic of working better together that either of you want to bring up that has been helpful? I know I'm just spitballing and asking a question that's a little unscripted, but is there anything else that you want to bring up before we conclude?
I think one thing we talked about, earlier this week was that times my client won't have flexibility after initial call. So the RFP will be turned. It's nice when suppliers will make a note when they're turning it down that says something to the extent of not available on your preferred week, but I have great rates the week prior or the week after. So they're not wasting time RFPs that my client may or may not consider, but it's like I just have that in my back pocket. So when I'm presenting to the client, I can let them know that that's potentially an option.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was also, I had a thought and now it's gone, but I was thinking more about communication as well. And I really appreciate, Kelly, you sharing the data that you shared about the life cycle, because I think a lot of times we respond to the RFP and we want to know right away if it's been awarded or if the hotel is shortlisted. And I think on the data, it was like 90 days. And so I think, we touched just a little bit on communication, but if we could just communicate a little bit better about that life cycle, and, this is going to take us, or we're not expecting to know for 90 days or 120 days, that would be really helpful as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I 100% agree on that. And I think it varies so much company to company. So that information to understand, I understand from your perspective, generally would be crucial, because you're dealing with so many different companies that are, wanting to host events at your properties, that it's hard to keep track of what those timelines really are and what you can expect.
Yeah.
All right. I think with that, we're going to move into our Q&A. So first, I want to thank you both for joining us. I think this is a great discussion. We could probably continue it for another hour if we wanted to, but we got a lot of great information out today. So thank you both for joining us.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
I also want to plug our gift card before we do the Q&A. I believe we'll have a link in the chat for you to fill out a form to get a demo with us. And if you do get that demo with us, you will get an $100 Amazon gift card. And LaToya has put that in the chat for you all. And now I'm going to switch over to live Q&A. Oh, also before I do the live Q&A, the survey, if you like this webinar, if you didn't like this webinar, I just want to hear from you. Please put your thoughts into the survey and let us know what you thought. You could also ask any questions that you had and maybe didn't ask live today. Okay, so I'm going to take that upvoted question right at the top, and I will display it for you all. How does IHG work with pharma companies hosting healthcare professionals to accommodate specific compliance caps on guest rooms in F&B? So that's a very specific question for you, Jenny, if you could take that one.
Yeah, well, I wish I could, but I am not the pharma expert. We have a team that focuses just on pharma. And so I think, it would be really important for you to connect with our pharma team to be able to talk specifically about how they do this. I do know that we do have pharma specific packages that we put together. And so, I would love to be able to connect you with our team. They are the experts, not me.
That's great. So if I don't get the name, I'm sure we can pull it though, the name of who asked that question. But if you want to let us know, Jenny and the team can follow up with you after this webinar for sure. And we actually have another industry specific question around government planners. They have obstacles when trying to plan events with hotels. The RFP process can vary, and there are restrictions on certain aspects like price, GSA rate. So what can government event planners do better to get more bids from the hotels? And this is another one for you, Jenny.
You know, I think that it goes back to that communication, right? I think that having conversations on what obstacles you are having and what obstacles our hotels are having, and we just come together and understand a little bit better what the needs are. Why are government RFPs being turned down? What is the challenge exactly? Because I don't know that. Again, I am not focused on the government segment, so I can't really speak to that. But I would think just understanding each other so that we're better able to accommodate our government business. It is definitely a segment that IHG appreciates. And so any communication that we can have to understand what is the challenge, what the challenge is, would be really helpful.
Great, thank you for answering that. And I'm going to pull up the next one. What is the smallest event number of attendees that Cvent will support? I think I want to ask Terry, just in terms of the Cvent supplier network, what was the smallest event that you've put through the venue sourcing technology?
So our threshold is 10 room nights on peak. So that's the smallest that I've ever done. I would say probably 12 room nights is more accurate for my account.
Yeah, and that's what I would have expected, but I just wanted to hear that from you. So that's typical when it comes to the Cvent supplier network and the group size, but Cvent has a lot of different technologies to support small and simple meetings, including our webinar technology that you're on right now. And you can really have a virtual event with a very small number of attendees and host it on Cvent webinar. And then we also have a brand new simple meetings tool called Cvent Essentials launching soon that is for really those smaller, less complex meetings. So we can get you more information on that, Paul, if you're interested. But we have a lot of technology to host the small, simple events outside of our venue sourcing technology. Okay, we have one more, it looks like, on here. Oh, no, I skipped one. We have two more, but I'll do this one now because I displayed it. What approach would you recommend when negotiating on the attrition policy with hotels? So I'll ask you that, Terry.
Okay, so I think there's a couple of ways to look at it. So if it's an event you have history on, and you know that the group meets, they do well in actualizing rooms. I think you can provide, with your client's permission, provide that information to the hotel so you have a bit of leverage with attrition. There have also been instances where I alluded to this earlier, where a group, the food and beverage minimum came in low. When I crunched some numbers, it was clear that they were going to almost double what the minimum was. So I was able to work through negotiating attrition and food and beverage minimum to create a happy medium. So the hotel knows that they're going to get that food and beverage revenue, and maybe we get a little bit more assurance in the attrition aspect. So those are two ways that I've gone about negotiating. I'm sure Jenny's seen more, from the hotel side as well.
Terry, I think that's great. That's exactly what I would say as well, and why it's so important that we have that history, and we can really take a look at where we can be a little bit more flexible with attrition. Knowing what was blocked and what was picked up can help with that. Yeah, I agree.
Great. Thank you both for answering that one. It looks like we have one more, which is perfect because we have 1 minute left. It happened, and I don't know when this comment came in and what we are talking about, so I'm going to read it and then maybe we can figure it out. It happens often enough that suppliers submit a bid without the requisite worksheet, even if the cover email especially points out that these worksheets need to be submitted with the bid. It is very frustrating and necessarily delays reports. So I don't I'm unsure what the question is, but maybe we have some commentary on that scenario that has happened with the worksheets. No.
I'm wondering if it's that they're submitting something that needs to be filled out to present to the client and they're not receiving it when, if it's an attachment in the RFP or something like that. So if that's the case, I would just make sure to put additional comments in the RFP that whether it's through custom questions or just the additional information to indicate that you require that information in order to move forward with the property.
Yeah. Custom questions is a good one. And I know that you don't want to overdo the custom questions, but of course that's where suppliers are looking for that additional information if you need to add that to the RFP. So that would be a good spot. And then Elizabeth, if you have anything more specific in terms of a question around this, feel free to reach out to any of us or put it in the follow-up survey, and we're happy to reach out. Okay, and with that, we're right at time at the top of the hour. So again, thank you, Terry. Thank you, Jenna Lee. Thank you to everyone who joined us today for this discussion, and hope to see you on another one.